Hi, my name is Walter Montano, and I did my research project for Unit 10 on Salvadoran culture. So this is just going to be a quick overview of El Salvador so that we can jump right in. So El Salvador borders the North Pacific Ocean to the south and southwest, and with Guatemala to the north and northwest, and Honduras to the north and northeast. In the southeast, the Golfo de Fonseca separates it from Nicaragua. El Salvador is the smallest Central American country and is the only one without a coastline to the Caribbean Sea. The main religion in El Salvador is Christianity. And the government is just like the United States, so it has a democracy with 3 branches to create checks and balances. And this is because throughout the Civil War, when El Salvador was going through a civil war, the U.S. decided to step in and help out the people there. So they also let a couple of the citizens become refugees in the United States, and they decided to step in. So in El Salvador, they used the dollar as a currency instead of their own like peso or euro or just any other currency. This right here is them worshiping God. This shows the geography right here. This is a parade that the people hold. And that shows, just like checks and balances, just like how it is in the United States. This is the overview continued. So, gender inequality can be found in various areas of Salvadorian life, such as employment, health, education, political participation, and family life. They have this thing over there called machismo, which is just very heavily like, guys overpower girls, and it is just a culture. Everybody's used to it, and nobody really questions any of it. And although like both genders are protected equally over the law, women are often at a disadvantage to their male counterparts, and that is shown in government positions because although women can run, they are more than likely never going to get in. And also the male is typically always the leader of the household. The mom usually doesn't work, or if she does work, it's selling food or clothing or cleaning people's houses. And the dad is typically always the breadwinner. So these are just a couple of pictures of stuff that we're about to talk about. So in El Salvador, the main value is family. And this is because, El Salvador is a very impoverished area, so they don't have much else besides each other. So they make each other, make sure that they're well off and that everything's good. Also, so they have some traditions like based off of the religion, which is Christianity. And some of those traditions are having a parade for Holy Weekend and Christmas. And also various artists come to paint murals on the streets for Holy Weekend. So right here, this picture right here is a mural that was painted on the street for Holy Weekend. And these are just a couple of pictures. This is the parade also for Holy Weekend. These people are dressed for the parade. And these are just some kids, just to show you, how the kids look like. So this is concrete expressions. And basically here I was just talking about, the typical foods served in El Salvador. And one of the main dishes is la pupusa, which is a thick handmade corn tortilla stuffed with cheese and beans. Another thing that I decided to put in here was the architecture, because it was mostly influenced by the Mayans in the early ages. And then when El Salvador was colonized by Spain, then the amount of adobe in buildings increased. Other than that, buildings usually don't stick out as much. This is recognized behavior. And a couple of things that I put down for this were, how people would act if you were to invite them over. So let's say you invited somebody over at 6. Typically they would show up 30 to 40 minutes late just because that is how the culture is. And it is expected of people, so it really isn't that big of a deal. Also, you can't start eating at the person's house before the host says buen provecho, and then you're supposed to start to eat, and also you're supposed to stay an hour after like you finish eating, or else it's considered rude because you just eat and leave. A couple of things that I put down for explicit beliefs is that people in El Salvador, like, things that are considered beautiful would be a close family. This is because, like I said, a lot of families can break apart because, you know, the dad isn't happy with how he's doing financially because, you know, they're super poor, or because things just happen between the male counterparts in there, and maybe one of them becomes a gang member, which is a very heavy problem in El Salvador. So seeing a close family is just really beautiful there because, you know, they're all they have, and seeing people fight through adversity to stay close just shows, you know, the true love that they have for each other. Another thing that I put down is something that is considered ugly, which is greed and selfishness, because of how everybody comes together to raise a family. Some things that I put down for cultural bias is that the most mistreated group in El Salvador is women. And like I said, this is because El Salvador is a very sexist country. And another thing that I put down is that the older generation is still very dominant and, you know, like, well, male dominant, and the younger generations are starting to give more women's rights. Some interesting facts that I put down is that in El Salvador for Father's Day, they made it a paid holiday, so they don't have to work, but they still get paid. And for Mother's Day, people still have to go to work. So that just really expresses, you know, the sexism that goes on in that country. And also, people don't really hang out on the street because that is where the gangs hang out. So people typically hang out at each other's houses. And this is my works cited. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope you learned a thing or two about Salvadorian culture.